opinion, which basically means that we feel that they're fairly presented in accordance with U.S. GAAP, as United States generally accepted accounting principles as they apply to governmental entities. The clean opinion. The standards that we followed were auditing standards generally accepted in the United States of America. Under those standards, it basically, under our professional standards, it requires us to plan and conduct our audit to obtain reasonable assurance that your financials are free of material misstatements and fairly presented in accordance with U.S. GAAP. We only give reasonable assurance. We don't give absolute because we don't look at every transaction. As I mentioned later on, the audit involves risk assessment. We look at certain areas, certain riskier areas, and do a lot of sampling in order to get to our opinion. We also did our audit in accordance with government or governing auditing standards, or the Yellow Book, and that's where we consider your compliance with laws and regulations. That's where we consider your compliance with laws and regulations that could have material impact on your financial statements. There were 3 repeat findings in this year's report that carried over from last year. They had to do with material adjustments that we proposed during the audit process, failure to comply with your minimum fund balance policy of 5%, and then the significant balance due to general fund from the food service fund, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. And then we did issue a separate letter, a management letter, with recommendation items only. We did not consider them to be findings, but there are areas, things there that we noticed that could be done better just to help you be more efficient. So we did issue a separate management letter. Since the district spent more than $750,000 federal dollars, we did a single audit in accordance with the uniform guidance. We also gave an unmodified opinion on compliance also, with no findings or internal control issues noted. This past year, the district spent federal dollars of $1.83 million. And the programs that we looked at are your child nutrition cluster, which is your school breakfast program, your national school lunch program, and in Title I. We generally rotate the programs that we look at each year. We're required to get a certain level of coverage. Okay. As I mentioned before, the audit is a risk-based approach. Some of the things that we do as part of our audit process is we do interview certain individuals at all levels of the district, staff, management, the board. We spoke to the board president this past year to kind of get an idea where their concerns were, if there's any areas that we should look at a little deeper, and so forth. We do evaluate the district's internal controls for the purpose of planning our audit approach. So for example, if we were to see an area where there was limited controls or poor controls, it'd be an area that we would do additional testing in. So if we saw there's really no approval process over invoices, we'd look at more transactions, do additional work at the Water Game Conference if there's not any problems in that area. And then finally, we do a lot of historical trend data where we compare your current year versus your prior year data versus your budget, in comparison to the actual data and known facts. We look at minutes, contracts, and agreements, and then lastly, substantive procedures. That's where we do third-party verifications, verify your balances with the bank, with your lenders, with PD for your funding, and so forth. Some of the numbers, and these are in the financial statements, but what I want to point out is the fund balance levels at year end. In red, you'll see that's your general fund, and in blue, if your 2 capital projects funds combined. As of June 30th, 2020, the general fund ended with a fund balance of $982,000. That's an increase of $108,000 from the year before, which stood at $874,000. And then your capital projects funds pretty much remain steady from year to year, $235,000 versus $232,000. The one thing I wanted to point out with your general fund balance, as I mentioned here, it ended the year with a fund balance of $982,000. However, in that number is an amount owed from the food service fund of $583,000, which has been outstanding for years. So I guess that really gets into the discussion if that's really going to be collectible, if the food service fund can really pay that back. Right now, it's in your fund balance for your general fund. It's really inflating that number if that's not payable. So one thing to consider is down the road, maybe the board should authorize a transfer just to to wipe out that amount due to between the 2 funds. General fund for 2020 had total revenue of $42.3 million versus $42.2 million expenses. Year before, your revenues and expenses were 42.1 versus 43.9. So your expenses from 2019 to 2020 were significantly down from the previous year when your revenues were fairly consistent. Diving a little deeper into your general fund revenues, for 2020, which is on the right side. Your largest portion of your revenues by far is the red bar at $22.76 million as your local revenue. And that's mostly made up of your tax revenue, EIT, real estate taxes, so forth. State funding, the 17.6 is your state subsidies. In the green, the federal revenue, the 1.1, that's all your federal revenue passed through PD and IU. So it's like Title I money, your school lunch program, IDA money, so forth. And then other sources, $825,000 this year. That's really, anything else like when you sell a building, you can get lumped into that category. Okay. With your spending, and I realize all the categories at the bottom here didn't show up, but in red is your biggest one by far is in red is your instruction, $27.2 million this year versus 26.5 the year before. Your debt service, which is the lighter gray bar, is about 3.7 each year. That's the payments on your bonds. And in blue is your capital outlay. Last year, $1.3 million. This year, it's about $300,000. Last year, there was some capital outlay that was paid for by the general fund. That didn't recur this year. Some other things I want to mention, because it always seems to come up in board interviews, is as you know, the district is with PSERS for the pension plan, and as of June 30th, 2019, and this is on a 1-year lag, which is permitted under the U.S. GAAP. The PSERS pension plan statewide was funded 55.6% versus 54% the year before. The liability that gets recognized in the district statements is your proportionate share of the net pension liability, which was 0.1162% of the overall liabilities at the PSERS level. And that's basically calculated is the district's total payroll as a percentage of the total payroll in the plan. So of all entities participating in PSERS. And that basically equates to a liability of $54.3 million, which is the district's share of that liability. PSERS OPEB plan was 5.56% funded for both years, this year and last year. Your percentage is the same and equates to a liability of $2.4 million. And it's one thing I want to note is that even though these are very large liabilities, it's not something that you can actively pay back. Just the way it gets paid back is, as you'll notice, each year your PSERS contribution rate continues to climb each year. And the hope is that one day the PSERS plan will become better funded and liability get under control, and that you won't have such a large liability in your books. But it's not something that you can or something you're expected to cut a check for and pay tomorrow. Just understand you're required to pick up your share of your liabilities. And then finally, the district does have additional benefits to retirees that are outside of PSERS. That's captured under a separate actual evaluation done by Conrad Siegel. And that liability was $888,000 as of a year end. And that's also measured on a 1-year lag. Things I want to point out is, during audit, we did get cooperation from management and members of staff. We did initiate the audit in December with a call with your interim business manager, kind of gave him a listing of things that we need in order to conduct the audit. We got that all arranged, and we as I mentioned before, we started on June 4th, and then moved fairly quickly, and overall no disagreements with management. These are things I'm required to communicate to the board, so that's why I'm bringing it up. Other than that, I'll take any questions if there's any questions. My high-level overview.
None for me.
No? Okay.
So you mentioned that you found some things we need to look at. What are they?
In the separate management letter?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. What was that? All right. We had a recommendation on bank reconciliations. It's good internal control policies that somebody, prepares them. You still hear me okay? Yeah.
You cut out every once in a while, but.
Okay. We had a recommendation on bank reconciliations. You have an individual that prepares in the district, and then the person in that position should be looking at them and reviewing them and approving them. During the year we looked at, there was no documentation that somebody other than the preparer of the bank rec was reviewing those and approving them, make sure that they're done correctly. So we had a recommendation that review and approval of the bank reconciliations be documented physically on the bank rec. That's a good check and balance to put in place. We noted that the district does not have a formal documented capitalization policy when it comes to what is considered to be a capital asset. Most districts will say, for example, if we buy a piece of equipment that has a useful life of greater than a year and costs more than $5,000, we'll treat that as a capital asset for our financial reporting and put it on the balance sheet and depreciate it over its useful life. Right now, what's being done is based off past practice. There's nothing, formalized. So that's a good policy to have in place. We had a recommendation on your accounting system, is your software. You've seen it had a very old and dated accounting software, which sometimes isn't really user-friendly when it comes to producing the reports that you need, the detailed reports of receivables and payables. Which therefore then requires a lot of manual schedules outside the system to be done in order to get that detail. We've had a recommendation that made the district down the road looking to upgrade to a more sophisticated system or a more current system. When it comes to processing of payroll, there are certain functions that generally you like to see segregated, in which the district they are not. And one has to do with the person in the district that maintains the payroll master file, which basically means the person that can, make changes in the payroll system, like when it comes to pay rates or adding or removing people, that be separate from the person that actually processes payroll. So breaking those controls up is a good segregation of duties. We were comfortable that there was additional oversight from the business manager level that would help mitigate any type of risk there. But once again, we should recommend that the two procedures be separated. When it comes to the mailing of checks, the practice of the district is basically that checks don't get mailed until the board officially approves the board listing, which we saw that was being done. Our recommendation is that what we noticed during our audit is that the person that actually cuts the checks, who processes them from the accounting software, is the same person who mails the checks. We recommend that somebody just at least spot check or look at that process and make sure that what the board approved and what was cut as a check is being mailed, that they match up. It's a good check and balance, since or you have two separate people do those duties. We had a recommendation on an inventory of your fixed assets, of your capital assets. What's shown in your financials as capital assets, there's a supporting schedule that backs that up. But when you go through it, there are certain items, computers from maybe say 10 years ago, or certain things that most likely probably aren't being used anymore. So we recommend that the district do a physical inventory and purge anything off the list that's no longer being in use or being used or can't be found. Overall, the impact on the statements is not material, because most of those items are fully depreciated or fully expensed anyway. But it's just we recommend it's good policy, good practice to have up to date listing of what the district owns. So those are the items that we had as recommendation items, things that we didn't rise to the level of finding that were in the main report, but they're issued in a separate letter that's for management and board use only.
And Mr. Eric, you have these things in the process of being taken care of?
Yes, we're going to be looking at those things here as soon as we close out the year, throughout the summer, to button up some of those things that he mentioned and put some processes in place that comply and put us in a better position.
And also, I know we had discussed this previously, but our accounting system is antiquated. Is there the money that's coming from CARES, or whatever they're calling it these days, is that able to be used to upgrade accounting systems or not?
I don't believe so, but I know the CSIU, who we currently use for accounting software, they do have a web-based version, which is much more user-friendly. It's actually cloud-based instead of remote-based. So I was actually on a webinar about a transition to that system, hopefully in the fall of this year. So that will hopefully greatly improve, from what I've seen in the demo, it'll greatly improve the operation of the district. So.
Okay. Steve, are you familiar with that at all? Do you know if that would be an improvement and help us?
Yeah, I believe it would be.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
Thank
I'd be
you.
comfortable. They'd probably imagine it's probably a more reasonable price too if you stay with the same vendor and it's just an upgrade. Ed, right?
Right.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. And I
You probably
do,
have- yeah.
I do realize that we are very shorthanded in the
Yeah.
business office, but we do, Mr. Eric, we really do need to take care of that, separation of duties issue.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
Sure.
If you guys wouldn't mind staying on for the rest of the meeting in case because at the end we have public comment and questions. So if you guys wouldn't mind, if you just stay on till the end, in case somebody else would like to ask a question after the committee, we get through the agenda.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, everybody can see my screen again?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda is our George's invoice for May of 2021. Currently, invoice number 1409, $93,243. This covers all of May activity regarding transportation of students to and from school, as well as our non-pub. You can see there at the bottom for St. John Newman. Is there any questions about that invoice?
No.
No, none for me.
Okay. Next topic on the agenda, again, budget transfers. These are 5 transfers we're looking to do to, again, as we discussed numerous times, get funding where it's being spent. Some of this stuff is already expended, I realize, and a lot of it's in the medical section of, there is some supplies in there. So again, there was money in our construction fund, which we're not doing any current construction. So it doesn't really make sense to have the money there. In these 5 codes, we're just moving it to, in example 1, high school guidance medical expenses. So that was coming in higher than what was budgeted. Autism services in the second one, and the third one, the same thing. And general supplies under our receiving and distribution, which is part of our business office. And then our services and judgment claims, which is under board services for legal. Any questions on those transfers?
No, all looks fine.
None for me.
All right. I have to rotate my screen here. The next topic on the agenda was we put out an RFP for our copier services. Our copier service lease is expiring in August of this year. So we engaged Toshiba, which was a direct contact. We engaged Fraser Advanced Business Systems, which is our current supplier. And then we also engaged Top Business Solutions and Xerox Direct. So in order to simplify this, I just kind of put together the spreadsheet. The first column represents our monthly rental fee. This encompasses 14 copiers in the district. The second column is your copy charge, which is your services and supplies. So this charge is reoccurring per month for all of the copies we make. Roughly, the district makes about 465,000 copies every month throughout the district. And then we also do have several color copiers in the district. That would be your next column over, and that is a monthly charge. And then your total cost column would be the total cost per month, as you can see listed there. I think the important thing to note about putting this out for RFP, there's a significant contractual savings by evaluating these 4 vendors. Toshiba Direct provides a contractual savings of just under $65,000 over the 4-year contract. Fraser Business Systems, who we're currently with, is $67,000. Top Business Solutions is $54,000, and then Xerox was $9,300. The copier service and the copiers themselves, the number one choice was the Toshiba Direct. They also offer, which some of the other ones do not, a Google integration platform. So then we could scan direct into the Google platform and our teaching platform in the district. And they also offer, as well as Fraser, a scan redaction program. So when we're scanning documents, we can auto redact instead of redacting manually. And then also with Toshiba, who we're preferring to go with here, there is some additional savings available by modifying our paper usage with paper cut and our copy usage. So we can monitor more closely our copies on a monthly basis. So all in all, either one that we go with would provide a huge savings to the district over the life of the contract. Toshiba Direct is the preferred vendor here from the district for the evaluation. And during that evaluation, we did bring in each individual company, with the exception of Top. They did not want to bring in a test copier, but the other copier companies did bring in copiers, and they did put them in the district in various buildings for several weeks for us to test and evaluate. Toshiba by far had the best service, as well as knowledge of school systems and the IT aspect of it as well. They were very helpful with our computer programs. Any questions regarding the copier RFP?
I have no questions, Mr. Eric, but I noticed, is Mr. Belt still on? I know he was here when we started the meeting, but I don't think he's here anymore. I just wanted to check and see if he got cut off, if something happened.
He's showing on my screen.
Yeah,
Okay, well,
I'm back.
Okay,
He's
he's
back.
back.
Okay, he
I
was
had a
gone
glitch.
for
I
a
don't
while.
know. I'm not sure what happened, but I had to restart my computer. So
Oh,
Okay.
okay, all right. Sorry, Rusty.
All right.
I just wanted to make
No
sure you
problem.
didn't get thrown off or something.
No worries. Ed, this is Nathan. I just, the numbers for the monthly service and click charge, basically, is that something you put together based on our current usage, or is that numbers that they're giving us also?
That was numbers based on our current usage.
Okay. And then I'm assuming the Xerox, since they don't include that, their contract is an all-inclusive?
Yeah, their contract would be all inclusive, correct.
Okay.
Now,
So,
they did offer a different copier selection, which would have cheapened the contract, but
okay.
we would have gotten smaller copiers that didn't have the capability and speed that we currently have. So I didn't necessarily want to take a step backwards for the district when we were actually being offered bigger, better models with more
Right.
bells and whistles and still saving the district $64,000.
Okay. Okay. And the entire bill is based on actual usage, or do they have minimums and things built into that?
No, so there's a basic rental fee for each copier, which is your
Okay.
monthly rental. And then your copier service charge is based on what we tell them. But we could also go to a per copy charge,
Okay.
which is part of the paper cut program that Fraser and Toshiba and Xerox were all offering, which is basically a management system where every copy is connected to every individual. So you know who is making copies. You know who is producing extra copies, or because sometimes they'll hang up, they'll get stuck in the into the copy machine. So you'll be able to gauge. We could actually put restrictions on the number of copies that are made. It's alarming the amount of paper that a school district goes through on a yearly basis. So I think that the benefit to this is, a little bit of oversight in the copy department, but also
Right.
the Google integration platform that Toshiba offers allows, we kind of eliminate redundancy. Instead of somebody making copies, one copy could be scanned into everybody's Google platform,
Right.
as opposed to somebody copying 28 copies because there's 28 kids in the class.
Right. Right. And I know I've seen other places where just the oversight component where somebody has to punch in a number to make copies is implemented. And just that bit of oversight tends to make everybody pay a little more attention to it. And ultimately, I think it's a good chance we'd see a reduction in usage.
Absolutely.
So, okay, no more questions for me. I agree with you. Toshiba seems good in the up to date and bells and whistles department. I think they'd be a good option.
Okay, I got it rotating in here.
You know, Ed, could I back up and ask also, would Fraser also be supplying Toshiba machines?
No, Fraser cannot supply Toshiba machines anymore. They are actually our current supplier, and we do have Toshiba machines.
Okay,
But they lost the contract with Toshiba, so they can no longer provide Toshiba machines or equipment. We actually, on their test, they brought in, I believe, Sharp equipment,
okay,
which was actually kind of a, without getting into the weeds on it, they actually had keyboards on them, which was kind of very old school.
okay.
As opposed to a lot of the machines have just touch screens like an iPad,
Right.
which was a little disappointing. It seemed like it was kind of a step back in technology.
Okay. And Toshiba will also be familiar to our staff, even though the machines are new. I'm sure there will be similarities.
Yeah, they actually worked very well with our staff in terms of setup. They helped everybody at least in the admin building. I know some of the people down in the elementary center with their computers and getting them set up to be able to print. Extremely knowledgeable just in the software side of it and how it integrates with the district.
Right.
So that was a real big benefit for the district, I think.
Good.
Okay. Next topic is our one-to-one technology hardware purchase. So kind of at a crossroads here for the 21-22 school year, which we currently had 650 Dell Chromebook units budgeted through the ESSER 2 funding, which is one-time funding. This includes the accompanying yearly licenses as well as a protective case and 3-year damage coverage. That is currently in the budget for the 21-22 school year, funded through ESSER 2 funding. In addition to that, those 650 Dell Chromebooks do not cover the entire need of the district. So in a 21-22 school year, the option for the remaining units is to lease them from the IU, which is what we did this year for pretty much the entire district. However, the IU rates have dramatically increased from what they were this current year. So currently, under COVID, we were getting a discounted rate of $150 a year. For the 21-22 school year, we got pricing from the IU to lease the Chromebooks for 1 year, and it will be $540 for the year. It's $180 per quarter. So the option is, and obviously it would be another outlay of ESSER funding in the ESSER 3 grant. So we would add the leased Chromebooks, instead of leasing them from the IU, into a purchase for ESSER 3, which would save the district $285 per unit. We need an additional 450 units, which would save the district $128,000 in year 1, and potential savings of $384,000 over the 3 years by purchasing the units. Because each year we would have to engage in a lease with the IU for those continued units. So an option for ESSER 3, which is I believe open now. We can file our application, and I believe there is going to be some public meetings on ESSER 3 as required to get input from the public, the board, the school district as well. But this one's kind of at a crossroads because we're kind of coming up on the new school year, and we're not anticipating the IU cost to jump dramatically like it did. So we would like to, and we're suggesting that with ESSER 3, again, since it's one-time funding, that we invest in the remaining Chromebooks and save the district the money as opposed to leasing the computers. And then we'll own the computers, and we'll have them for 5 years or more. A lot of our current computers we've been carrying for well over that. So just wanted to get that out there and let everybody know where we stood with our one-to-one technology program. Like I said, the 650 is currently in the 21-22 school year ESSER 2 funding.
So the cost to purchase them is less than the cost to lease them even for a year?
Yes.
So it seems like a no-brainer.
Yeah, exactly. We were actually really surprised by the IU's jump in cost from the COVID rate this year to next year's rate.
It sounds like they don't want to be in the Chromebook leasing business anymore.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like to me, and I can understand why, because it's a lot of tracking and hassle and damage and repairs and management. And it's not just for the Titan; it's for every district that they deal with. So
Right. Okay. And then is the issue also that we would need to get that order in soon to have them in time for the next school year?
yeah, so because we're coming up on the new school year and Chromebooks seem to be in high demand, in addition to computer chip issues, that is part of the issue. So I would really hate to engage in a lease and then, find
Right.
out that purchasing them was the better option, because we're kind of just throwing money away if you're going to turn around and buy them anyway.
Right. I agree. I think it seems simple enough that purchasing would be the way to go. It's just a matter of figuring out how and getting the order in time.
Absolutely.
I agree wholeheartedly.
And it is very, I mean, with everything that's going on in the world today, and the way the classroom has changed and evolved dramatically, a lot of the work that the students do these days is on the Chromebooks and computers that we have in the classroom. So this is a great step forward for the district, and I think it'll put us in a good position for years to come.
And I believe that's what the ESSER funding was designed to do.
Yes, correct.
Right.
Gotta rotate my screen again here. Lehighton Area School District 2000 June 14th budget update. Revenue for the district 21-22 anticipated budget $42,697,405. $22,881,000 from local revenue, which is state taxes, local income taxes, state revenue 17,538, and federal revenue, which does include some of the ESSER funding, 1.5 million at 2.277 million. Expenditures by function, regular education, obviously the largest expenditure in the district at 41.86%, 17,873,000. Our special education expenditure is at 17.58%, 7,507,000. Debt service 3.7 million, just under 3.8 million at 8.9%. Our building and grounds and maintenance at 6.9, 2.9 million. Our transportation services, which again is full restoration of transportation for the district, 1.3 million, which is 3.04%. Our vocational education is 3.86% or 1.6 million. And our admin services, just under 2 million at 4.59%. The all other is 13.1% at 5.632 million, for a total expenditure of $42,694,456. We break that down by object, which I do realize is very difficult to read. I apologize. Regular education, 17.8 million. Special education, we talked about 7.5. Vocational, 1.6. Other instructional, 1,400. Function code is 80,000. Our adult education programs, 234,000. Pre-K kindergarten, 162,593. Pupil personnel, 1.1 million. Our support services, 937,000. Admin, 1.9. Our pupil health services, which is our nursing services, 335,000. Our business offices, 591. Our maintenance department, we just talked about 2.9 million. Transportation, we talked about 1.3. Central and other support, which is our IT and software, is 915,000. That does include the purchase of the equipment under the ESER 2. Other support services, 25,000. That is IU pass-through. Our student activities, 928,000. Community service, currently 10,000. Debt service, 3.8 million. Fund transfers, 120,793, which is representative of our food service salaries and benefits. And then our budgetary reserve, which is basically the admin roof, at $159,000. Budget summary: total estimated revenue, $42,697,405. Total estimated expenditures, $42,694,456. A total projected deficit or surplus. This puts us in a surplus of $2,949. Any questions on the budget update?
Now this, Mr. Eric, this is, again, the preliminary proposed budget. We will be discussing this in a budget meeting before the budget is approved, correct?
Yeah, so again, next week, the hope is to have another budget meeting at some point next week, because the budget does have to be passed by June 30th to comply and with PDE. So obviously we would want to have as much discussion on this as possible. But we are projecting right now a surplus of just under $3,000.
And also I did see that you have under community services, $10,000, and we have yet to decide exactly that. I'm guessing that's the library.
Yes, that is correct. So when I got to the point where I refined what I had produced, there was money left in there. So I put the $10,000 in there without taking us back into a deficit. Obviously, trying to get something in there. I realized there was much controversy in the board meeting regarding that topic. But I know there is district policy regarding support of the library, as well as there was support from the board members for that. So I did want to get something in there if it was there. I just didn't want to leave it blank.
So basically you're saying if we want to do the full 20, we have to find 10,000, well, $8,000, $7,000 somewhere, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right, that's for discussion for budget. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And no further questions for me on that.
Okay, I do have to. Rebecca, are you on there?
Yes, I am.
We're missing the RFP for solicitor in the file. That's what I'm looking at.
The one I would have sent you on Friday. Which one? And it's not really on that one from today.
This one?
Probably, but no, it'd be after.
Mm-mm.
Is that Fridays?
No.
Okay. Fridays, the original one I sent you. Do you want me to scan to you again? Do you have it?
Here it is. Okay, sorry about that. I had to One of the items was missing from the scan, so I had to bring it up. Here it is. Okay. So let me re-share a different screen. So in addition to the RFP for copiers, we also did an RFP for solicitor services for the district because our agreement with Eric Filer and Schwab was expiring in June of this year. We did a 1-year extension last year with Mr. Filer. So we did receive proposals from several law firms. The first one here being Sweet, Stevens, Katz, and Williams for solicitor services. They currently are with 23. They have 23 attorneys collectively representing close to 300 school districts and school entities in Pennsylvania with 40 years experience. The standard hourly chargeable rate is $160 an hour for attorneys, $125 an hour for legal assistants. And then non-routine matters, which would be anything in litigation, is $195 an hour for attorneys and $125 for legal assistants. And then the rates, they do comment that the rates have remained unchanged for 7 years, and that if a rate increase were to happen, it would be no more than $15 per hour over the 21-22 school year. They also did provide some information which we can post and get to the board regarding some of the other districts that they have and what the fees were that they charged them. You can see Palmerton, Southern Lehigh on there as well. And then again, they just talk about their hourly rate for services, 160, which I mentioned, 195 for non-routine services. And it does go into a description, which a non-routine service is anything where threatened litigation circumstances in which the client is contacted by an attorney representing a specific client, actual litigation, hearing request, citizen complaints, defensive complaints filed in court or before agencies or hearing before the school board itself. And then routine services are things like phone calls, opinions, document review, right to know responses, board policy and procedures, contracts, research, or other activities not covered by the proceeding are considered routine. Filer and Schwab also submitted a proposal. And again, there's hourly rate is $165 an hour for an attorney. And then paralegal hourly rate is $75. Attendance at meetings will be a minimum of 1 hour. And then that was pretty much Eric Filer and Schwab's proposal. And then King Spry also did a proposal. The annual fee and scope of services in the agreement for King Spry, they do it a little differently. You could actually do it 2 different ways. You could do an annual fee, which would cover all your basic services. So that would be all telephone conferences between the district and the legal firm. That would include board members on matters not in litigation. Their annual fee would include attendance at regular board meetings and any accompanying executive sessions, as well as committee meetings that may be required. Any incoming emails from the district, personnel, and board members on matters not in litigation. And then all other services not otherwise chargeable, including but not limited to additional lawyers not specified by the client. So for that, you could pay an annual fee for 21-22 of $15,000, 22-23 of $16,000, and 23-24 of $17,000. And those rates are basically based off of insurance rates. We currently use CM Regent. So services, that falls under consulting. So they do an 87% of the basic rate, which is basically, they give an example here. The basic rate is $185 based on the CM Regent partner rate. And consulting rate would be $160. And then so on and so forth. They do labor negotiations. So the alternative with King Spry is to do the annual fee of $15,000 and then pay for the non-routine services, which would currently be what we're currently engaging them with now for anything under litigation. Or you can do the hourly rate. You don't have to do the annual fee, but you could do the hourly rate, which is so happens to match Suites and Williams, the first proposal. So there was 3 proposals for legal services, solicitor services for the district.
Mr. Eric, do you have any idea what we've paid for legal services so far this year? In other words, I'm going to guess with a board attending board meetings and so on and so forth, it's more than $15,000, correct?
I didn't look exactly, but I can certainly pull those numbers.
Yeah, it would be helpful to know that before making a final decision, because you know, if King's Prize includes board meetings, then you know, that's fine. And if their rate for anything outside of board meetings is the same as everyone else's, then that's fine too. I'm just curious as to, you know, what would be our best financial option here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we want to make an educated decision on this. It's a large expense for the district, not only just for the routine services such as board meetings and committee meetings and things like that, as well as when board members reach out to the legal team or the district reaches out with questions or emails. Those are all chargeable services under our current system now. If it were to be included and we just had a simple question, we're not going to get charged 15 minutes of legal time every time we do that, or every time we pick up the phone. We're not going to get charged for those services if we would engage with King Spry. But yeah, we can certainly pull those figures and put them together so that it can be evaluated further.
And you, if I recall correctly, their fee for negotiations was $212. So in other words, that $15,000 does not include negotiating contracts. That's just
No,
for
that's
the
correct.
basics.
Yes.
Yeah.
That would be
Okay.
additional fee.
That was my understanding. I just wanted to clarify for my own understanding. Okay.
So just to continue, yeah, there's non-solicited special education counsel they do, which is an hourly rate of $185. And then, you know, the nice thing about King Spry as well as Suites is that they have a wealth of service with other districts, Allentown, Bangor, the list goes on, where they're either solicitors or special counsel. It's quite extensive, you know, up into the Poconos, Parkland, Northwestern, Northern Lehigh, Northampton Community College, Wilson. And then again, they do just like Suites and Williams, they list, you know, what the expenditures were by district. You know, Stroudsburg's relatively close to us. Spent $55,000 in 2018, 35 and 19, 35 and 20. The IU as well. So we could, again, get all this information out to the board. So
Yes, that would be helpful. Mhm.
Yeah, because there actually is, I kind of stripped it down just for the purposes of presentation for this meeting. But there is, you know, full proposals for each. So we could definitely get that out to everybody.
Thank you.
Also with King Spry and Suites and Williams, they do appoint multiple solicitors to the district. So there would be the opportunity to have multiple solicitors at any given time.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. That concludes the presentation for tonight. Let's see, I don't see.
Mr. Eric, can I just say that if any of the public does have questions for Barbicane, that they please do those first. And so those people can leave. And then if there's questions on anything else that doesn't involve them, we can take care of that afterwards, if that's okay with everyone.
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened, but I don't see them on anymore.
Oh, okay.
So I'm not sure if they got disconnected or it's something that I maybe did.
Okay.
But
Well,
we will take-
In
we will
that
take-
case, we can get answers to anybody from them.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they are more
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
than willing to answer any questions that we might have, that anyone might have.
Yeah.
So at this point, we will certainly engage for public comment. And I see Mr. Bradley has his hand up. Mr. Bradley, you've got the floor.
Excellent. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, in the future for these meetings, you should allow the public to have, it's like a committee meeting. So we should have access during the process that you're having your discussion because it's more topical, right? So let's go back to the copier first. You mentioned that the proposals you did were what we want to call better for less. You were looking for better for less. Did anyone ever ask the question, how much was the cost for our actual needs so that we could save all the money, not just better for less? Did we look at that as a criteria? Were you as the administration tasked by your board prior to going out and doing all this work to say, look, we definitely want to know how to save money and maybe get better for less, but did you also get the direction from your board to ask how much is the cost for the actual needs of the district?
No, the board did not engage me, Mr. Bradley.
Okay. We need to do that as a subordinate administration. The failure to look at some of those things is definitely going to cause budget stress. The usage of tracking was implemented a few years ago with Mr. Fike and myself and other players, and it was very successful. Such insights from your board help you as an administrator make better decisions, get better information, and provide it to your board so that we can make a better educated decision. What exact model Chromebook are you looking at?
Do you have the copier, the Chromebook? If you hang on a second, we will definitely get that.
Sure. And then the question is, did we look on the government purchase site to decide what they cost, or are you going external to that pre-negotiated like the co-stars and some of those things? Because I agree with Mr. Fuller that the cost of a Chromebook was less than we leased it for. We brought that up before and it fell on deaf ears. It is super logical that you want to own these things and then either hold some of the people that you're giving them to more accountable, but you definitely have a risk of maintaining them because even if a kid breaks it, you still have to get the kid another one. You can't exclude his educational services for the lack of a Chromebook.
Yeah, so the Chromebook that we've priced is a Dell Chromebook 3100 Celeron N4020, 1.1 gigahertz Chrome OS 4 GB, 32 GB, touchscreen, 1366 by 7689, UHD graphics with 600 Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, along with the warranty.
And the 32 gigabyte was suitable for the educational program that we had. We didn't have any issues with those.
No, we actually tested. We actually tested 3 different versions of Chromebooks. Several vendors were more than willing to send them in here for evaluation. We did have them down at the school with our IT department. They went through them, they tested them. We put them in hands of teachers and students to do a thorough evaluation of each unit. The one that we chose was the most popular model, but the fastest model as well for what we were doing.
When
In addition to this, the particular thing about this Chromebook that was unique that all the other ones did not offer, this one offered a 2-port charging location, one on each side of the computer, which seems to be the downfall of the Chromebooks because they are basically cheapened versions of laptops. When one of the prongs breaks off in there, then it becomes a very difficult task to either get it out or get it repaired. So with this particular model, it's one of the only ones we could find that had a dual charging port, one on each side.
And from memory, without having this information prior to the meeting, I wanted to look it up. But when we bought the Wi-Fi devices for the elementary center, whereas it was off a government contract and it was very frugal. Those things were very efficiently purchased. Did we look at that source? Now, whereas the quantity of those Wi-Fi access points was significantly greater than what was originally proposed or needed for their capabilities. And we overspent in that regard. The actual individual device was pretty competitive from that government contract. Did we look at that government contract for these Chromebooks?
Are you talking about devices or access points?
So I'm talking about the elementary center access points. When we purchased those access points, they were purchased very efficiently. The problem was we bought way too many of them, right? So we weren't efficient with the number we needed, but we were efficient with the price of those access points. And there was a vendor that was a government vendor that was not bid, because you're able to buy it off the government program without needing to have a bid. And I'm asking whether or not that same vendor was questioned about these Chromebooks because of their incredibly competitive nature in the cost of an individual item once you identified which one you wanted. Did we use that vendor as one of our sources since we were so successful with them in the past?
Right. So I think you're talking about CDW, but again, I would have to confirm further. CDW Government Solutions is who we used to get all of our access points when we built the elementary center.
Yeah, that sounds familiar. I think it was.
Yeah, I think it is. I think that's who it is, CDW. But again, I would have to look further into, if they offer or what they offer. It seems like it's kind of a mixed bag out there as to what's available and what people can offer.
Yeah, I would recommend that we at least check that. It doesn't cost anything to ask them other than some time.
Okay, yeah, and actually I'm just, Rebecca's here. She did say we did test with CDW. Their Chromebooks were $75 higher than the current
Price on the other ones. Okay, great. At least I got an opportunity and we checked. So
Yes,
then the last one, I'm sorry, we got two more things here. So the budget update. When
Yes.
you put in the budget update numbers, did you include the support contract numbers being used that include a proposed stipend going to all of these employees as a cash payment? And apparently the negotiation does not have a service tied to that cash payment. It's just basically a thank you bonus. Did we still count that in? What numbers did you use for the support contract to come up with your budget? That left you with only $2,000 left over.
I'm not sure what you're talking about, stipend for support contract.
So there's a support contract that's being negotiated currently. Were you privy or were you given information as to what that support contract would cost, or how did you calculate that into your preliminary budget? And the current negotiation includes a payment stipend, much like was paid to the union contract. And that payment statement to the union contract was $1,000 each, not $800 or $700, but $1,000. And it was not tied to or associated with additional services. It was just, thank you very much, here's your $1,000. So they're trying to go down the same path with the support contract, with giving a paid stipend without any additional services tied to it, just a payment, a thank you payment. And was that calculated into your preliminary budget?
I'm not aware of that.
Okay, so what numbers did you use
I use their simple salary numbers.
from last year?
No,
From where?
from where we believe the contract is going to land.
Okay, so then hold on. So now let's use very specific language here. So you use where you think the contract's going to land. Who told you where the contract's going to land? Was it Cleaver would tell you where he thinks the contract's going to land? Did you calculate where you think the contract's going to land? How did you come up with where the contract's going to land, leaving us with only $2,000 left over and only a $10,000 payment to the library? If you're not privy to the current negotiations that include the stipend payments to the support staff.
Okay, so again, I was privy to the negotiations, but there was no stipend payments similar to the teachers involved in that contract.
So then we're not privy to the idea that were they removed from the negotiation or were they hidden in the negotiation? Who's doing this
I've never seen
negotiation?
anything like that
Who's on the
in the
negotiation
support
team
contract.
for the support contract? Who's on our negotiation team?
Mr. Bradley, that would be me, and I don't know what you're talking about either.
Okay, we had an executive session where the superintendent said that they were going to be paying stipends to individual support staff members. And I want to know whether or not that's still on the table and if that's one of the reasons why we're only $2,000 within budget.
Those, I think what you're talking about are the stipends that are already included in the existing contract for the PIMS coordinator, the food service coordinator, as well as the supervisors for maintenance department. But other than that, it's not contract wide for every employee.
Okay, we want to confirm that because the information.
Yeah, that
was
is
presented
what
us
I
with-
remember. If that's what you're talking about, Mr. Bradley, that is what I remember, but there's only a few of those, and that was because they took on extra duties.
Right, and a stipend for extra duties is understandable, but we still got to make sure that these stipends for the extra duties are actually performed. For instance, we paid lots of stipends for an NEF program that apparently we may or may not have done in the years to which stipends were paid. We still have to investigate that. But anyway, so you were given a support contract approximate prior to the actual support contract being finalized. Is that correct? You plugged in a number thinking where it's going to land without it having an official landing yet.
That's correct.
Okay, so all we have to do to make sure the library gets its 30 grand worth of funding is save $20,000 more off of a several multi-million-dollar contract with hundreds of employees. Okay, the next one. Given the massive amounts of school code non-compliance under the regime created by the rubber stampers and the Schwab filer or filer Schwab and the Kingsbury cabal that took place, and their failures to educate the board and see to it that the board would have the advice to act inside of the compliance of the Pennsylvania School Code, I think you should exclude those two from your RFP list because they have proven themselves not to do it. And there's a rule of professional conduct for attorneys, number 5, that states that a lawyer's conduct should conform to the requirements of the law. So we did not. So the players did not. Both in professional services to the clients and in the lawyer's business and professional affairs. The lawyer should use the law's procedure only for legitimate purposes and not harass or intimidate others. The slap litigation that they accepted from this board against myself, a strategic lawsuit against my participation in using the right to know law, would also be underneath this rules of ethics. I think since they have proven themselves to have done it, they should be excluded from providing those services forward to this district. Did anyone review the professional rules of conduct, their actions, and the proof from the Auditor General's report about how these board members acted in noncompliance under the direct oversight of those solicitors, including advertising the properties properly before they sold them and noncompliance with the budget and using the budget. The fact that we put millions of dollars aside for future pension funds, which you just described in this meeting, and they took those funds from that protected account and used it to buy an off-budget stadium with that cash that was really put aside for these staff members and their post-employee benefits. The fact that all of those things were documented and even in court are accepted as being done by these directors, why would Filer Schwab even be entertained as a request for proposal, or King Schwab even entertain that opportunity for a proposal? Who told you to put those on the list to get the request for proposal, or was it publicly issued?
It's my understanding, Mr. Rarick, correct me if I'm wrong, but when an RFP goes out, whoever wants to bid, bids.
Was it
Yes,
publicly issued?
It is posted on our website, yes.
Okay, and it was publicly issued, and they're the only 3 that you got. And 2 of them, in my opinion, would be considered unqualified by any rational board member, knowing the history of this district and the history of those law firms, and the proven activities that they took place that caused this board, or allowed this board, to act in a way that was in non-compliance for years, shows that they should not have been accepted as requests for proposal. And we should go back until you find 3 and do more advertising to ensure you get 3, because you have currently only have 1 bidder and 2 unqualified bidders. The next thing is that you made a comment 17 minutes into this meeting that the budget money was already spent, and therefore you are moving the money to cover the budget money that was already spent. Can you confirm that that was the statement you made?
Yes, that was the statement I made.
Okay, and do you agree that we spent the budget money prior to moving it? We're moving it after we spent it. So we failed, we as a board failed to instruct our subordinate administration to move money prior to authorizing our subordinate administration to spend the money that we did not move. Would you be in agreement of that?
If that's your opinion, yes.
Well, that's what you just stated, that the board authorized who gets paid, and the board authorized you to pay things, and now you're finding out that the board didn't have money in the budget, they didn't move it first, and now you're asking the board to move it because we already spent it, and now we got to fix it. And all of that is board related. Would you agree that that was the process to which the board took place?
Mr. Bradley, I think we're back to the same thing that we've talked about before.
We're asking the question. Hold on. We're asking the question specifically because he brought it up in this meeting, and you're looking at moving money again to budgets that were already spent. So the question is, the board is authorizing to have money spent prior to the administration having the money in the account, and then the administration taking board orders paid bills that it didn't have the money for, and now that administration is suggesting, recommending, lobbying the board to move the money into the proper budget so we can put the baby back in the bathwater. And I just want to clarify, because this is definitely a item of contention, that is the current facts as they are that took place. Is that correct, Mr. Rarick?
Those are the facts, yes.
Excellent. And then did you get a chance to read Section 509 of the Pennsylvania School Code as I suggested to you in our meeting?
509?
609, my apologies.
609, yes, I read.
Okay. And when you read 609, did you feel that this board had the legal authority to authorize bills that it did not have the money to be spent?
Mr. Bradley, I told you during that meeting that I disagreed with your interpretation of that code.
Okay, but you did read it since then.
Yes.
Do you still disagree with it now that you had the luxury of reading it?
Yes, I disagree with your interpretation of that code.
Excellent, no problem. And then about 34 minutes into this meeting, you presented some information regarding the budget that was very hard to read. Did you find out it was hard to read only at this meeting or prior to the meeting?
Yes, I didn't look at the scan.
Okay, no problem. I think it's very important that the board gets accurate information. These meetings are recorded. They got to be able to be seen by others. And I think that is an error that can be corrected. I hope we correct it in the future. And then also when we look at the copier savings that was also on a screen, which was great, that by providing that to your board prior to this meeting, we can then look at it and say things like, okay, you have a monthly arrangement, you have a savings that you're looking at. What is the actual total cost of all the copying for the year? How much was it before? And then if all these savings are sitting there ready, how long ago did we have this lease contract? And why wasn't this corrected, years before and we're only getting to it now, especially when we had many of the same board members on that original contract? Were we not given that information? Were we not asking for it? Or was it just not professionally provided because you came from the private sector that needs this kind of information? I just think we need a little more.
Yeah, I know that copier contract was set up by Mr. Fike.
Yeah, years ago.
Yeah, 4 years ago. And I read through that lease agreement. We could not break that lease agreement. So without paying
Right.
it out. So
I agree. And I think that error back then is being carried forward. It predated me, but not many of the people on the board, and it was very costly. I don't think it was properly reviewed. I think they rubber stamped it. I think they did it with a blind trust and not really digged into the matters that the board is supposed to do, and I think that's part of the problem. I also saw that in 37 minutes into this meeting, roughly, you mentioned that there's $10,000 set aside for the library. I think the number needs to be 30. And then the last thing was Barbicane has left the meeting, and however, they had mentioned that we need additional people reviewing these checks prior to their release, because there's no checks and balances when the same person's doing both. Do we still have authorization to use the treasurer is currently Rita, use Rita's signature without her actually signing it, and use Larry's signature without him physically seeing or signing it, and it just gets printed onto the check as a rubber stamp? Or do we physically have some oversight of these checks prior to them being released?
The printed signatures on checks are pre-printed.
Pre-printed, yeah. So they're not really even looking at it and putting their signature on it, or they're pre-printed before they even look at them, right? There's an assumptive printing of that check with the numbers and the signatures already on it.
I believe, yes, they're pre-printed. No, they get printed on. I could have to confirm that. I don't want to make a statement that's incorrect, but I think they're printed as the check is printed itself.
Rita, when do
we
you
order the checks in large batch?
Rita, as the past treasurer, when do you review those checks? Prior to your name being put on them, or after?
Yeah.
I review them when they're put on for payment on the board document. It is customary, not only in school districts, but in business, to do those checks for things that are already contracted, purchase ordered, budgeted, so on and so forth. As long as you look at the amounts and you see that that amount is correct and you have a contract to pay that bill, you pay that bill. That is common practice in accounting, Mr. Bradley. I don't know. I'm sure you don't do that in your business, but that is common.
Common doesn't make it right, Rita. But at the same time, I got to ask the question then: how do you reduce the amount of consumption being used by this district? Is it during the signing and authorization of bills and not paying them? That doesn't make sense. So it had to be during their origination.
It's during the budget process, which we're in right now, Mr. Bradley. If
when they're
the budget,
originating.
it's originally in the budget, yes. And it's based on what we spent in the past, what we know is going to change, what we know we can cut, and we've cut a lot this year, and what we know we need to increase. And a lot of that is up in the air because we don't know our expenses from day to day. So you do the best you can. And once the budget is made, that's when that's when it's agreed upon. That's when the board technically pays it. And, we don't pay the bills and ahead of time when we don't have money, as you're stating with the budget transfers. It's a matter of budgeting it in a certain category and finding out that you need it in another category. Not that you're taking it from them, but that it was budgeted. Let's just say it was budgeted for middle school. And now you find that some of those things have come up in the elementary center, and you need to move a certain amount of money to pay for Chromebooks that you're going to use in the elementary center that you previously had budgeted for the middle school. And that's just an example. So you don't have to strangle me on that one. It's just an example to show you that's not spending money you don't have. That's spending money you budgeted, that you have, but you have to use budgeted money in a different area because something has changed. And that's the nature of education spending, and it's the nature of all spending. Having done books for many different kinds of industries over the years, that's just the way it goes, Mr. Bradley. I know you don't like it, and I know you don't agree with it, but it doesn't make it wrong or evil. It's the way it works.
But basically, your lawful authority is that you have to move the money prior to spending it. You can't decide, I'm going to take money from here and then go buy this over there, when you already told the public that you work for how you were going to spend the money. So if you're going to say we over budgeted area A and we're going to move the excess that we did not spend in area A to area B, you have to make a motion first. And by making a motion, you're allowing public comment on that motion. You're basically allowing people to make two open statements. Number one, why didn't you do the job right the first time and budget it properly? And then number two, very important, before you move this money, you have to basically tell them you're going to and the reason why, and they have to agree. And if they do not agree, they can do one of three things. They can either hold you accountable as citizens that elected you, or they can remove you from office, for failure to do your duty. Now, if you
Mr.
do it
Bradley,
without asking for, hold on, I'm speaking. I'm
No,
speaking. If you're
I'm
doing
not.
it without,
We've been
if
through
you're
this
doing it without,
before,
if you're doing it without
and
moving,
you are incorrect.
oh no, if you're moving it before you have the legal authority to move it, because you didn't ask for it first, then you're over exercising your authority. You had to have moved it first. That's all you have to do is say, look, we made a mistake in the budget. We put a lot of money in here that we didn't need. We shouldn't have put so much in. So next year we're not going to because we put too much in, or maybe next year we're going to leave it in because the system changed. But what I'm getting at from a budgeting standpoint, like you said, when you spent the money, there was $1.3 million put in the budget, Rita, for NEF, and it wasn't consumed properly. But you didn't move it to somewhere else. You literally had it, you as the board, as the
Bradley,
government
you're
agency, prior to
complaining
you.
about something that
But-
happened a long time ago.
but it happened a long
and
time,
I
but the
have
budget-
no idea how it happened.
I
So
know. But the reality is that's exactly how it happened. It was rubber stamping blind trust. And what happened was the
I
1.3.
think we need to
The
move
1
on.
point, we are the
Sarah.
$1.3 million that was spent was never taken out of the budget, Rita. So when you moved it forward, when the next budget year came, and that money was not removed from that line item that was not consumed, there should be a $1.3 million savings. And I don't understand how you, if you have some business experience, can say we had a budget of X. Let's call it $40 million.
I don't want
which
to go
included-
through this again,
which
Mr. Bradley.
including-
Please,
which included-
can we move on to the
I
rest
am-
of the
I am
public?
addressing
You
my-
can berate me and
I'm not berating you.
another
I'll
time.
talk to Nathan, who has a more clear mind. Nathan,
We
if
have
you have
some
a
other,
$40 million.
we have some other questions from other
it's-
people, if I could please
Yeah, but
move
hold on a
forward.
second. Wait, let me finish this. If the board
You
had a
get
budget,
3 minutes,
Let's
Mr.
allow the
Bradley.
rest of the
I
public.
understand. I have more than 3 minutes, but if you have, it's a committee
you
meeting.
don't.
If it's a committee meeting, if you had a $40 million budget, and in that $40 million budget, you had $1 million that was wasted and not consumed, as according to the Auditor General's report. If you move the budget year forward to the next year, you're not going to put in another $1 million of waste. You're going to move it over and say $39 million. So the fact that we carried forward the waste, the corruption and waste, and continue to have carried that forward year after year until the mistake was found, and we still didn't correct it on our budget, that is why you have an escalating budget. That's why you have all this money laying in all these other open budget accounts, because it's use it or lose it. It's Rita's ranting ways of saying she's not following the law, and it's wrong. And you need to look at it from a big picture view, 30,000 feet, that says we wasted almost $3 million. And when we wasted that money, we didn't take it out of the budget in the future. We left that corruption and waste in the budget. It should have been removed. Thank you. End of comment.
Barb?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about the RFP for Solicitor Services. I would, if I were looking to hire someone, I would be talking to the districts that they worked for previously and find out how happy they were with the services provided and what they were charged. You may find, and you may not find, that districts were unhappy and were paying too much. Or you may find that they were very happy and were not paying too much. It's a big expense, and I think that the references should be checked to make sure that the information you were provided was actually correct. And that would be my comment on the RFP services. As far as moving budgeted funds before they're spent, while I disagree with Mr. Bradley on certain things, I have to say that 609 specifically says that it has to be moved prior to, so does 687. Because 609 applies to 687. I would look at that again and maybe get information from maybe King Spry on that. I don't know. It might have to go to a judge. I don't know. The other thing I am concerned about with Solicitor Services is the right to know requests and the amount of them that are sent to the solicitor. If that is not included as a normal type of thing, would we be paying, 15 minutes of solicitor's fees for everyone that is sent? I know there was a motion made that the board, etc., would be trained by the OOR for free, and it was not done. So perhaps that would be another way to cut back on costs there. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Barb. I think it's also important, in particular to the committee to point out and regarding 609 and expenditure of funds, there are times when not everything fits inside the little box. And I'll give this example, and this doesn't, I'm not trying to paint with a broad brushstroke here, but an example of a grant, we're required right now, we were given a grant. We can't get the grant money till we expend the funds. We didn't know we were getting the grant. So we basically have to expend the funds first, file for our expenditure, and then get the grant money. So in some cases, you are going to put the cart before the horse, in particular with certain spending. It's very restricted, it's very organized, but it has to be done that way. And we're currently under that right now. We were just awarded a grant. We have to do the expenditure and then send it in before we get the reimbursement. So there is going to be an expenditure hit the district, and then a grant come shortly thereafter to cover that expenditure. So not everything fits inside of the box. I think that's important to understand. And I think to Barb's point, this is going to be evaluated by legal. So there is also a comment or question from Autumn. Autumn, can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I just wanted to say on behalf of the Lehighton Library, thank you for including us in the budget. I did note that it was for the 10,000, and I know Rita was questioning if it was possible to come up with the additional. I guess there was a surplus of two and change, so there would have to be 7 and change still found. Is that something that you may be looking into yet to add to the budget, or is it set at the 10?
Well, again, I put that number in there because that's what fit inside of without putting us back into a deficit. But yeah, certainly if we could find more savings somewhere, we would certainly, look to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Zlomzwich? I think I have to promote you to panelist, Mr. Zlomzwich.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we got you.
Awesome. I'm dressed this time. A couple quick things on the solicitor. When you took them bids in, can you go outside on your own and contact solicitors on your own to get more bids from them?
Yes, we can.
Okay, because I heard that Jim Thorpe has one out of Harrisburg that I guess does strictly school law. And
Okay.
I believe when I talked to one of their board members, they were around $145 an hour.
Oh, okay.
They also said that sometimes they'll have a quick question. They'll call down and ask a quick question, and they do not get billed for the $145 an hour. It's just a quick answer as to yes, no, or whatever the question would be. So sometimes they're not just billed on increments either for a quick question.
Yeah, I could certainly reach out to Jim Thorpe and see who they're using.
Okay. The other thing I think is important to know is, and maybe I'm wrong on this, but I believe that the 1,000 stipend to the teachers has probably already been earned, because I know that the last 2 years they've dug into their own pockets to do some supplies for our students to learn with. So I personally feel that is just covering a debt that they've already sustained on their own. So I know Dave likes to ask for, what are they getting or what are we getting for the money? I think it's probably just a return of that favor of buying paper and stuff for our students. And then I guess my final question is, on the bond restructure, does that happen quickly?
So it is a process. At the board meeting in June, there will be, I believe, another brief presentation. They like to do a presentation just to make sure everybody's aware of what's going on and allow for more discussion before a motion is moved through. But there would be a motion moved through on that board meeting that would have to be approved. And then from there, it would happen relatively quickly. They have to get it totally restructured before our November payment is due. So the goal would actually be to have it restructured, I think, in September.
Okay, so it'll happen before the election.
Yeah, it would happen before the fall.
Okay, because I know the community was very upset about the waste of that, over $2 million. So basically, we're in such dire straits here financially that even with the last 2 years of tax increases, we need a max 4%. We also need this restructure to save money. And we also have COVID money.
I don't know if you're asking, my opinion. It's a board decision.
Well, but you're the business manager, so I'm saying, as a business manager who just showed up here and walked into this mess, the COVID money, I see Panther Valley's using COVID money to not have a tax increase. Are we that bad off? Did the majority 5 currently, plus some of them that are thankfully gone, do they have us in that position that the COVID money, the last 2 years of tax increases, and a bond restructuring, we still need another tax increase?
So again, if the district were to, but so again, you're not going to get all of your COVID money in 1 year. It's going to be stretched out over till 2024.
Okay.
So to be able to push it all into 1 year would be very difficult. There's also another issue that arises from using all of that money. In 1 year, you could end up losing all of your federal funding in following years, because you're basically supplanting all of your expenditure with federal money, and you're not covering it with local tax base or state money. So it could actually hurt the district down the line by using all of that COVID money to try and cover expenses.
Okay.
Now, Panther Valley probably weighed out the chances on that and figured, we can afford to lose that federal funding, maybe because it's probably significantly larger than what they're getting in federal funding. So there are different ways of looking at it, yes, but it could actually hurt the district if we were to use all of that money in the current year or the next year.
Okay, that's what I just wanted to understand, that because I seen that that's what they were doing. And I was thinking a third year of tax increase, and it's a max tax increase. And then they're also voting to throw $2 more million away to save more money. And then on top of, COVID money, where's all the money going? Is it that bad? Or is there some relief for the community?
Yeah, I think obviously this year is, we put 1.5 million of COVID into the budget to cover, a lot of those expenditures that, we weren't able to cover with just our revenue and our funding from the state. So again, my hope is, the structuring provides relief for the current year for the bond, and that allows us to bridge in case something happens with the state budget. The district doesn't have to spend that money, so it could be a zero loss on that, and it could help us in the future. As part of, I think Nathan pointed out, and PFM pointed out, it's not one key to solve the problem. I think it's several steps that the district has to take to solve this problem. I think it's obviously a board decision. I'm not opposed to the restructuring, but I think in some respects it makes a lot of sense. But also I realized the apprehension of the taxpayers. I'm a taxpayer myself, and I don't want to be in further debt as a district. I'm certainly here as the business manager, business administrator for the district. I want to put ourselves in a better position going forward, so that we don't have to tax and raise tax revenue and hurt the taxpayers more than what they've already been hurt. It's a difficult decision. I'm sure nobody wants to make it. But I would also say that I think we're in a better position today than we were a year ago. And I'm pretty positive a year from now, we're going to be in an even better position, whether we do the restructuring or not. PFM pointed out, we don't have to do that restructuring. That is a 100% board vote to make that happen. And we do not have to do that. So
if you're here now and stay with us, do you think as the business manager, you could find a way around that restructure financially?
I could.
And it's just an opinion.
Obviously, I want to stay here. I want to be with the district. I didn't put in for this job to be here for a year and a half. I took this job believing I could help the district and believing that we could get through this. The restructuring wasn't even on the table or in my mind until I think February or March. So when I think it was brought up by Barb about kind of what happened to it. So yeah, I would certainly look at that. And if I could provide some insight on that and prevent that or put something forward that says, yeah, this is an alternative to that option that I think would help the district, then I'm certainly gung ho and all for that to help the district.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. Is there another way around that? And I know it's an opinion because you're not sure exactly what you're probably facing here. But that's what I was wondering, if there's another way around that, loss of $2 more million to do a restructure, if that's absolutely necessary or not.
Yeah, I will. I'll promise you this. I will definitely look into it tomorrow, and formulate some alternatives.
Okay, I appreciate it. Have a good night. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, you as well.
And thank you for what you've done for our district so far.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Ms. Sittler?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. First, I'd like to say thank you for acknowledging that the district taxpayers are, basically hurt by all of this and struggling through all of the debacle that is our school district. But my questions are, one, can you give us some examples of what the COVID money was used for? As many people have asked, and we're just kind of curious.
So again, the COVID money hasn't been used for anything yet because we haven't, well, I shouldn't say that. We actually got our first payment a couple of weeks ago for COVID money, but it hasn't been expended yet. There was some original COVID money from, I think, last year that has been filtering in. And I don't know if I could pull it out here. Do you have that? Yep. Just give us a second here.
No problem.
Is this the new one? Okay. Right, we're not for the first care. Yeah, okay. So again, the ESSER 2 funding is for continuity of education. ESSER 3 is more focused on learning loss. Obviously, we talked about the purchase of our technology, our one-to-one technology is a big part of ESSER 2. School police officers is in ESSER funding. Support, we put all of our technology purchases and programs that would be used towards the students. All of the technology programs the teachers use, all the learning platforms like Power School and things like that that the district uses, those are all in there. In addition, EPA registered disinfectants, as well as foggers for the district to prevent further spread of transmission of COVID related issues. Transportation was included in ESSER 2 funding. So we wanted to include that to restore our transportation. risk assessment, professional services and evaluations for everyone from pre-K through grade 12. And then again, salaries for, we were able to work salaries in there for guidance counselors, school psychologists, which would be directly related to COVID issues, social workers. And then that includes all their salary and benefits. So that would be for COVID ESSER 2 funding. The first COVID package, which was basically just an ESSER fund, this one came out when COVID first hit. This was basically salaries for special education, which is where our district was struggling to keep up. The salary and benefits for 2 special ed and 2 ESL gifted teachers, along with our non-public school funding programs for that one. And then there were supplies, purchase of operational supplies, hand sanitizer, hand wash, disinfectant, face masks, sprayers to help us meet guidelines with COVID. So that one was the first one that came out.
Did you give, you guys, you supplied the teachers with face masks?
They got some on their own, but we also, we did have these next week. The nursing staff.
Yeah, so the nursing staff was provided with, so again, I wasn't here when COVID first hit. I was not working for the district, but I'm told that the nursing staff was supplied with masks. I know a lot of our students were supplied with masks through the agreement with Lehigh Valley. And a lot of the teachers went out and got their own masks. But I believe that the district was, through the help of Lehigh Valley, providing masks and sanitizer.
You know, I mean, I've heard from a lot of teachers they had to buy their own mask, their own PPE.
I would imagine if they didn't like what was provided, then yeah, they could go out and buy their own. I know where I came from, we originally were provided masks that didn't really fit my face very well, and I didn't like the way they felt. So I went out and purchased my own PPE.
I mean, I was in the thick of it, and I didn't like the PPE that we had either, but you know, that was all we had. So I wore it. But that's just a question. My next question is pertaining to the solicitor. I have to tell you that I'm kind of disappointed that the numbers aren't there in regards to what we spent in the past. You know, as you're giving us these numbers, but it's not like we're not comparing apples to apples. Can't make any kind of educated decisions if we don't have all the variables. Like, I would really appreciate, like, when we have these meetings that we would say, this is what we spent, this is what we're looking at, these are the people that we're looking at, let's make the best decision. I feel like we were cheated a little bit with that.
So
But-
again, I just want to point out that our current solicitor, we pay by the hour, no matter what the service is.
Right.
So all of those solicitors that provided, RFPs to the district provided their hourly rate. So that's typically how solicitor services are purchased through school districts, is an hourly rate. King Spry was the only one to offer an alternative to that, which was basically a $15,000 retainer for year one. I can certainly go back and calculate, pull all the bills for Filer Schwab and determine how much was spent.
I think that people would appreciate that. We would really appreciate that. I think everybody would appreciate knowing, what did we spend? Like, what did we actually spend?
Yeah, so for
I know
Filer
it's
and
time
Schwab,
consuming, and I appreciate all your hard work.
for Filer and Schwab this year, we've spent over $40,000.
Okay. But we don't know how much over.
Yeah.
That's,
I
did we
could give you an exact
42?
number if you want.
Or did we spend 52? Yeah, an exact number would be awesome.
Yeah.
That would be,
I think he's right though. In comparison, when you're looking at the solicitors, ones, they're all given an hourly rate. So to know what Schwab's hourly rate or Filer's hourly rate is to compare it to the new ones, I think is fair to Ed.
mm-hmm. Yeah. But those were my questions, and I appreciate you answering them to the best of your ability.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
That's grand total for everything.
Okay. So just as a point of reference, Filer Schwab was $39,374 for the district year to date.
Hey, Ed, sorry to interrupt again.
Yeah.
King Spry, do you have a figure for them people?
If you want to hang on a second, we will certainly look that up for you.
I don't mean to drag this meeting out.
That's okay. You know, I think some of the issue too is we have a lot of duplication of service between King Spry and Filer Schwab.
Agree.
You know, the thing I like about King Spry as well as Sweets and Stevens and Williams is their extensive legal team, as well as their experience within districts all over the state.
If I was going to vote on one of them, it would have been your first. It would have been the first one there.
Yeah. So with King Spry year to date, it's $45,205.73.
It's right almost 100 grand in legal fees.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yep. I believe Barb has another question.
Yeah, what you said before with the budget transfers. The problem, I believe, is the fact it's always been done this way. And prior to your coming to the district, things were not in the proper categories, it seems, at all. And it always looked like we overspent the budget. If it was something that happened only occasionally, it wouldn't really be a big issue, like you said, with the grants, etc. But I just wanted to make that comment on, and I realize that you are trying to get everything in the proper area. The other thing is with the solicitors, like I said before, I think you need to talk to the districts, and certainly Wally's suggestion, the solicitor from Jim Thorpe, it would be interesting to find out what they're paying and what services they get for that. Since they're out of Harrisburg, I don't know that they would be attending in-person meetings. That might get kind of expensive, but certainly something to look at because it is a large expenditure. And that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, the district, and I also want to point out the district does have the ability to interview the solicitors if they so choose. So that is a possibility for the district to interview those solicitors. And Barb, I would agree. I pulled 6 years worth of budgets that are already closed, and there was, zero budget in some captions where money was spent, as well as a lot of overspending in certain captions. And again, I wasn't here at that time. I can't answer as to why it was done that way. I'm just trying to make it better and trying to fix it for the future. I think it's important to point out that the budget numbers are just budget numbers. There's a lot of work that goes in behind those budget numbers to get that information into the correct code. So I have a file about 6 inches thick of paper that all has to be programmed for each individual budget code. So it's not just a number on paper. That number on paper gets broken down in by each school, by each funding source, by each function and code. So, I'm trying to do the best I can for the district to get that money where it belongs. And hopefully moving forward, we have very few of these scenarios. And obviously, yes, we want to get the request to the board prior to the spending. So.
And yes, I thank you for all that you're doing. I think what happened in years past is nobody paid attention. So nobody questioned it. And I do appreciate all your hard work. And certainly having better software might make your job just a wee bit easier, I would think.
Yes,
All right, thank you.
thank you. Mr. Bradley?
Thank you. To Wally's point, when you pull up the Kingsbury money that they spent, the $100,000, can you separate that into how much we spent fighting students' IEPs, how much we spent on defense of litigation for challenges of immunity, and any other services that they would have provided underneath the Filer Schwab subcontract? And then secondly, you mentioned that you went through 6 years of budgets and you went back and you looked at them and you saw ones that were negative and ones that were empty and they were still spending them anyway. But yet you also, I'm assuming, and I trust because I know your diligence in this regard and I really appreciate all your efforts. You read the Auditor General's report where it physically said that it was those areas that they went over budget that was in non-compliance with Section 609 of the Pennsylvania School Code. So again, I'm not sure why we're spending money that we didn't move first. And I think it's just bad form for a government. And then I also think it's bad form for a government to put in a budget that they can't afford without making the cutbacks that are needed. And to Wally's credit, I do believe that these teachers paid for supplies out of their own pocket, but it made no sense because we had plenty of leftover money in supply budgets that easily could have been applied to give to the students. It seems as if those teachers were being punished and not provided the resources they need, which has to be an emotional drain on a teacher to see a kid not have the supplies he needs, especially when this community spends so much money to educate a student. You know, almost $17,000 per student, $215,000 through their career to not have those resources. And if the taxpayers are going to give those teachers back that money, when we still had a surplus in our budget, we should then give that money back to those taxpayers with a refund and a rebate like was originally planned in the Jericho process, because we know better than don't borrow more money than you need, and you know better to live within your means, and you know better than to just, give away money without getting a resource in return for it. We also have one last thing on that, IEPs, the budgets, and these attorneys. We were found by the government that we were not providing the educational benefits that we were supposed to provide for kids with special needs, learning disability. To not do that and then to argue those in court when we were already told that we're not doing it, that needs to be corrected, and these teachers need to be given the latitude, the ability to create their own curriculum and do the things they need and get rid of that Common Core, because if they are given the freedom to do their job, we will get a better product at the end. They will be better supported by the board, and the finances will be there for them. Thank you.
I don't believe there's any other comment from the public.
One more, Mr. Erg. Is that true that there was money there when teachers were digging in their own pockets?
As far
Yes,
as
Wally. Well, yes.
last year?
Yes, Wally. It's you can look at it
No,
in the
no, I'm
supplies.
asking
That's where we're
Andy.
moving it from. That's where we're moving it from. Thank you.
So I talked to some teachers, like I said, that said that they've dug more in their pocket this year than they ever did, and they dug in last year.
Yeah, I believe that's true, and that's what seems to be the mode operatus here. When the district can't supply something, they reach into their own pocket and fund it because they don't want to see the kids go unfunded. In particular, I know the art department has done that, where she has taken money out of her own pocket to buy art supplies for students.
Right. And I applaud him for that. But now Dave made it sound as if there was money there that they would not have had to do that. Is that accurate or not?
Again, I think he's going back to past budgets, so I don't know.
Okay.
No, this year we have excess money in different categories that could have easily been moved if they needed these things. We're moving it now, hundreds of thousands of dollars, Wally. Hundreds of thousands of dollars is being moved. for things that we bought and spent without the board's approval first to correct this. It's wrong. It's mismanagement. The board is not doing their job. They're spending time rubber stamping. Those poor teachers were asking for, pleading for supplies and things, not getting them from our subordinate administration. And then now complaining, like you said, and yet we're moving money from one budget line to another. If you could put it back up, you can see it, Ed, how much money we're moving from excess budgets that should have been going to these kids. Those teachers should not have to suffer and watch a poor child not have the supplies they need and have to pull money out of their own pocket.
David, do you have examples of this?
Yes, pull up the transfers on page 4 of this of agenda.
Well, I think for what Mr. Rarick's done so
Mr. Rarick, pull up page 4 so we can show it to her.
I think for what he's done so far for our district, we're heading in the right direction.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to make another argument. I didn't know if that was
Can
true
you
or
please
not.
put it on the screen, sir? We'd like to show
Again,
the
we
example.
know what the transfers are. I
Can
don't
you
know.
please put it on the screen?
For what purpose do we need to put it on the screen?
I want to show Kerry that money's being moved from excess budget areas to areas that we're spending money on when it easily could have been moved to supplies so teachers didn't have to pull money out of their own pockets. All they had to do was ask and have them given to them. And if our administration would recognize that these teachers needed this because they were making these statements on Facebook, on public media, it was an easy fix. And these, I want to say it again, these evil directors don't do it. They don't do the job. They blindly trust the administration. They make these kids suffer. Everyone feels that these kids are suffering. So therefore, oh, we must need more taxes. We must need more money. It's just a management issue. So please put it up.
First of all, stop. Nobody's hijacking this meeting right now.
I didn't hijack it.
Right.
Yeah, I've asked the question
stop.
and it's there.
All right. So I would like to make the point, since I've been with the district, not one PO purchase order for any teacher has been turned down. We've provided every request that the district needed, including a stage for graduation. So since I've been here, December 16th was my start date with the district. Not one purchase order was rejected by the district administration for any supply for any student.
So are they not asking? And if so, why are they pulling money out of their pocket? This district is $40 million flush at the beginning of every season. These teachers don't make that much money. They don't need to be donating to a community school that's publicly run by a government. That's like offering extra taxes. It's painful.
Right.
It's wrong. It's mismanagement, and it's the lack of attention by school directors, and that's the issue. So if you put up that budget transfer, you'll see it, and we'll show everybody. And it'd be nice to see, because then the teachers can know how to do it. Did you just mute me again?
So again, I just want to reiterate that since I've been with the district, not one purchase order for any supplies has been rejected by this office for any student. It's my understanding that there was some strict rules in place prior to me getting here with the prior business manager regarding purchasing of supplies. Beyond that, I have no further comment on the issue other than that simply every PO is evaluated and we are not cutting supplies away from students.
Again, thank you.
Yep.
Yes, and I would just like to clarify, I would also disagree with Mr. Bradley's characterization that everyone agrees that the students are all hurting. I don't think that's the case. No district is perfect and there will constantly be issues that require our attention. But I'm here because my students are in the district and very happy with much or most of what goes on there.
Okay, I don't see any further comment. Next meeting for finance is scheduled for July 12th, 2021. Everybody, please have a wonderful evening.
Thank you very much, Ed.
Thank you, Ed.
Yep, thank you.
Thanks again, Ed.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Oh, won't let me do it.